Hey you guys, welcome back to the salon. So, remember the video that I did a little while back about my favorite creepy books from my 70s childhood? And I think on that one I said, oh well, I'm probably going to have one or two more installments of this because I thought of a bunch more. And indeed, here is a second installment. I'm going to talk about 5 books that I really loved as a kid growing up. As I may have mentioned on that first video, I was really into horror from a very young age, and I started reading kind of more adult fiction. I read a lot of YA and stuff like that, but I read a lot of stuff like Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft. I even started reading Clive Barker when I was maybe like 11 or so. But the thing about it is that even though I did read a lot of adult fiction, I read a lot of YA, I also liked more kid books. I guess like these ones are kind of, the ones I'm going to talk about today are kind of YA. They sort of like fall into maybe the gray area between like kids books and YA, you know what I mean? I kind of feel like maybe they're geared toward, I don't know, 7-8-year-olds, something like that. I can't remember exactly like when I got these, like how old I was, but I was really into these. So now I can't remember who gave this to me. Could have been my parents, could have been another relative. But when I was a little kid, I got this delightful black box set. And it had 5 little paperbacks in it with different colored spines. Now, recently, I searched for this whole box set online, but I can't find it. It looks like the 5 books that are in it, you can only buy them individually, and I don't even think you can get them new anymore because I feel like some of them are out of print. So the ones that I found online were used, like from this era. So you can't like buy them all in the box set anymore, but when I got it, it was a box set back in the 1970s. Now, only one of these books was straight up horror. The others were kind of more like dark fantasy or like funny fairy tale type stuff. But I was really into these 5 books. I read them so much until, I mean, they just all fell apart. You know what I mean? I don't have the box anymore. I don't even think I have, I might have one of the books, but it doesn't have a cover on it because like I read them so many times. So the biggest and also the scariest book in the collection was The Thing at the Foot of the Bed by Maria Leach. It was this sort of illustrated compendium of traditional ghost stories, urban legends, and poems. And one of my favorite things was that it had all these handy ghost tips thrown in at the end, like what you would do if you came across the ghost, you know what I mean? Like it had kind of all, I guess it took stuff from like folklore and things like that. For example, I distinctly remember that the book warned me not to touch a hat that had been left on the road with a stick lying across it, because that hat was a ghost hat, like it belonged to a ghost, and he had put that stick across it so living people want to touch it, because, you know, you gotta stay away from ghost hats, man, because the dead are like really super touchy about their headwear, apparently. I don't really know, but I don't know why I remember that tip more than any of the others. Maybe because when I was a kid and I was walking around like not too long after I had read that, maybe I was like walking around and I saw a hat with a stick and I was like, oh shit. I was like, I better not touch that. Maybe that's why it stuck in my mind. I can't remember any of the other ones, but I do remember that. So The Thing at the Foot of the Bed, it had all of these really well-known tales, like The Golden Arm, Sweet William's Ghost, like a lot of stuff that are like sort of campfire tales. It had the one about the kid who goes into the cemetery on a dare and then sticks his knife through his own coat tails or shirt tails or whatever and ends up dying of fright like a dumbass because he thinks the corpse reached out and grabbed him or whatever. There were also a couple of funny ones in there. There was one like about a guy with super long teeth, which actually was like supposed to be funny, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that's actually like pretty creepy. You know what I mean? Now that I'm thinking about it. Or there was one with like an old man who shot a bunch of holes in a nightshirt, like hanging from the line because he thought it was a ghost outside, so he was like shooting at it. The 2 stories I remember the best, though, were the ones that I thought were the scariest, naturally. The first of these was called Sop Doll. And this was about a guy who, he's sitting in his shack and eating some gruel, as you do. And he's sort of inexplicably visited by a series of larger and larger cats. Did I mention that the cats could talk And they kept saying they were waiting for someone. And also that the guy was so freaked out by this situation, I mean, you can't really blame him, right? That he ends up slicing off one of the bigger cat's paws. And also, the next day, he discovers that his wife is missing her hand. And thus, he finds out that his wife is a shape-shifting witch. Which seems like something you should have sorted out before you married her. But, you know, whatever. I can't remember the name of my other favorite story. It might have been in Spanish. I can't actually, like, something about cabeza or something like that. But I still recall the details, like, pretty vividly because it had to do with beheading. And beheading has always been one of my things. Like, it's simultaneously, like, fascinating and horrifying. You know what I mean? So the story is basically the dude is, like, coming back from the butcher with a calf's head in a bag. He's going to eat it for dinner, which I think horrified child me more than the outcome of the story did. I was like, you're eating a calf's head? Oh. But as he walked, the bag is, like, dripping blood everywhere. And eventually somebody calls out to him and is like, hey, might want to show that calf's head. It's not supposed to be, like, dripping blood like that. So the dude pulls the thing out of the bag and he's all, like, cavalier about it. And it turns out that it's not a calf's head. It's actually his best friend's head. So the dude gets, like, taken into custody and hanged for murder. And at this point, I'm kind of, even when I was a kid, like, I was kind of confused by this. Now I understand that it's sort of like a Telltale Heart situation. Like, he maybe, like, dissociated and, like, cut off his friend's head and then put it in a bag. It's like, no, it's just a calf's head. And he actually, like, believed it because he's just, like, traipsing down the street, like, casual as you please. And people are like, hey, what's with the dripping shit in there? Like, your calf's head shouldn't be dripping that much. And he's like, oh, look, oh, shit. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel like he had gone, like, maybe delusional after the murder. Because when I was a kid, I'm sitting there going, well, if he knew that he cut his friend's head off, then why did he just, like, show it to everybody? Like, when he's like, hey, look, I'm a murderer, hang me. It's like, so I didn't really get it. But like I said, I get it now because I think it was more like the Telltale Heart. But, you know, as a kid, I was, like, really confused. So the second book in the set was called The Witch's Egg by Madeleine Edmondson. Now, this one didn't make quite as large an impression on the others, but it did have a crabby old witch in it, and I always like those. I recall it was sort of like a Grinch type of story with this cranky witch, and she kind of, like, finds an egg, and, like, a baby bird hatches out of it, and, like, it softens her terrible witchy black heart. I'm not really sure, like, why she was looking for the egg. Was she, like, looking at a nest so she could eat them or shit like that? I don't really know, but she found the egg and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna eat this shit. But then I don't know if she killed the mom bird. I don't really remember it all that well, but the fact that she was just this horrible evil witch and then she was like, oh, little baby bird, and she, like, raised it and shit like that. So, you know, it was all heartwarming and shit. And then there was another one called Miss Clafooty and the Demon. Now, this was by J. David Townsend. And this one is always going to hold a special place in my heart, too, because I think it was this book, and I think I brought up, like, Edward Gorey before when I was talking about The House with the Clock in its Walls. And I said, oh, The House with the Clock in its Walls and the PBS Mystery Show was how I, you know, kind of got into Edward Gorey. But I forgot this book was also illustrated by Edward Gorey, and so I probably read this one first. I might have seen the PBS show first, but I think I might have seen this before I even saw, like, House with a Clock in its Walls, so maybe this was my introduction to Edward Gorey. So what the story is that Miss Clafooty is this very prim, very miserly chick, and she's, like, rolling in loot. But despite that, she lives in this big mansion, but it's all, like, ramshackle and busted up. She kind of, like, wears layers of these old out-of-style clothes, like a bag lady. She only eats, like, expired food, like expired peas and, like, old stale bread crusts and shit like that. And she never invites anyone over to her house because that means that she would have to spend some of her money. Now, her money, she keeps it. It's all in gold and silver coins, and she keeps all of them, like, stored in this old stocking. Maybe she has more than one stocking. I don't really know how much gold and silver coins were back then. Her favorite thing is sitting around in her broken down house, running her fingers through her coins and sort of, like, congratulating herself on how much money she didn't spend that day. She gets put in her place, though, eventually, by the appearance of a small purple demon. because why not? So the demon has, and I remember this quote quite vividly, a mouth like an oven. He basically like shames her so much that she eventually like pulls the greed plug out of her butthole and buys some actual food and buys some nice clothes and fixes her house up and has a big ass party and invites everybody over. So, you know, demon comes up, and little purple demon with a mouth like an oven comes out. He's gonna shame you. It's so random. I don't know. I loved it though. And like I said, I really, really liked Edward Gorey's illustrations for this too. Now, probably my favorite book out of the 5, out of the series, was Margaret Storey's Timothy and Two Witches. Like I said, I love witches, and this was more like a dark fantasy. Like, it was pretty, it had scary like parts to it, but it was like mostly a dark fantasy. And it was set in Britain, and it was like had that kind of like charming like British YA kind of tone. So Timothy is this kid, and he goes to live with his aunt, I think, after his parents die, probably. I don't really remember what happened to his parents. His aunt is a white witch, and she's real young and pretty, and all sorts of like cool shit happens at her house. Like, one of the things that I remembered, I don't know why I remember this, but like you're in the bathroom like cleaning up for dinner, and like the soap will just like pop into your hand, you notice, you don't have to like reach over and get it. Witchery makes you like super lazy, I guess. Stuff cleans up after itself, which is really nice. I mean, I'd totally probably sell my soul to some lesser demon for that. Oh, you're gonna clean up all my house after me? Nice. Okay. I also have a really clear memory, because even when I was a kid, I was a total dessert whore, that the aunt would make these little cakes and give them to Timothy. She didn't bake them or anything. She made them magically, but they always had his name written on them in icing, and I just thought that was so fucking cool, like when I was a kid. I don't know why. Come to think of it, I kind of want to go live with this lady right now. I mean, she sounds like pretty rad. Now, there was also a little girl in the story. I don't remember where she came from. I don't know if she was the aunt's daughter, so like Timothy's cousin, or if she was like a neighbor kid or something like that. But she befriends Timothy at some point during the story, and she also has cakes with her name on them, and her name, I can't remember what it is. Because this was a dark fantasy with a white witch in it, you also had to have an evil witch. And I think that, like, Timothy falls under her spell somehow, but the white witch was more powerful and everything worked out okay in the end. Another thing I remember a lot about this book was the descriptions of like the magical woods where the good witch lived, and then the trees and the grass and stuff like all glittered like with gold and silver. I thought that was really fucking cool, and I still remember it like after all this time. Like I said, I really want to go live with this lady right now. I want magical maid service and little magic cakes with my name on them and glittery trees and shit like that. Man, fucking life's unfair, goddammit. So the last book in the set was this sort of like wacky fairy tale, and it was called The Strange Story of the Frog Who Became a Prince by Elinor L. Horwitz. And it's sort of like a send-up of the old Frog Prince story, wherein a witch, another one, there was a lot of witches in this box set now that I'm thinking about it, who's out doing some kind of like freelance witching one day, and comes across a very happy, contented frog and turns him into a prince. I don't really know why she did that. I didn't know like witches would do that kind of shit for free, but you know, I learned a lot about witches from these books, I guess. So the twist is that the prince that the frog gets turned into looks a lot more like Prince Charles than the artist formerly known as. You know what I'm saying? He's got like big old buck teeth and big old jug ears, and he's all knock-kneed and shit like that. I mean, you know, give the witch points for accuracy, I guess, but the frog is like really not too jazzed to be looking like this. He's like, hey, I was a lot better looking as a frog, which is true. So finally he convinces the witch to change him back, but she can't remember how to do that. So maybe she's a trainee witch, I'm not really sure. And that's why she's going around changing random amphibians into members of the royal family. She's practicing, because she clearly needs some. So a bunch of zaniness ensues as she tries to remember the spell to return him like to his frog state. And I think a lot of the words, I think it was mostly like just words spelled backwards. I think that the spell that ended up working was peanut butter sandwich spelled like said backwards or something like that. I think it was something like that. But she was trying to like say all these things backwards to like turn him into a frog. But she does actually like turn him back into a frog, and then he's happy again, and then the witch goes about her witchly way, I'm assuming. So yeah, these 5 books that came in a box set, they don't anymore. But I can't remember who gave them to me as a gift, but I read the shit out of them. I still remember them after all this time. I don't actually think I have them anymore because, like I said, I read them so much that I wore them out. But it would be really cool if I could kind of get hold of them. But I don't think that they... Maybe I think The Thing at the Foot of the Bed, I think they do have like some newer editions of that, but like the other 4 books I don't really think I can find. I've seen used ones, but they're all like pretty beat up, which is kind of a shame because these were all like really, really fun stories. So that will do it for this latest installment, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.